Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Kalpit Matre from Changukana Thakur of Arts, Commerce and Science from TYIT. I am here to present a topic of incremental model. So, what is the incremental model? Incremental model is a software development process that delivers a series of increments, each building upon the previous one. In this model, the entire system is broken down into a series of smaller, manageable increments, and each increment is delivered in a phased manner. So key features of incremental models are iterative, deliverable, evolutionary. So first we will see iterative. Each increment in the incremental model involves a series of phases like planning, design, development and testing. This means that the project is broken down into smaller manageable parts and each part goes through a complete development cycle. Second is deliverable. A key feature of the incremental model is that each increment delivers a working product. This means that the customers can benefit from a partially functional product early in the development process rather than having to wait for the entire project to be completed. Next is evolutionary. The incremental model is evolutionary, meaning that the product evolves over time as new requirements are added. This allows for flexibility and adaptability to changing needs, as new features can be incorporated into subsequent increments. Now we will see the advantages for the incremental model. So first advantage is early delivery. Customers can benefit from a working product early in the development process, allowing them to provide feedback and suggestions for improvement. Next is risk reduction. Risks are identified and addressed incrementally, reducing the overall risk of project failure. This is because each increment is relatively small and manageable, making it easier to identify and mitigate potential issues. Third is flexibility. The incremental model is highly adaptable to changes in requirements. New features can be added or existing ones modified in subsequent increments, ensuring that the final product meets the evolving needs of the customer. Next is prioritization. Critical features can be delivered first. Next is improved quality. Continuous testing and feedback throughout the development process leads to higher quality products. Issues can be identified and addressed early on, preventing them from escalating into larger problems. Now we will see the disadvantages. So first disadvantage is complexity. Managing multiple increments can be complex. This is because each increment requires its own planning, design, development, and testing, which can be challenging to coordinate and manage effectively. Next is cost. The overall cost may be higher due to multiple development cycles, while the incremental model can offer benefits such as early delivery and risk reduction. The additional overhead of multiple development cycles can sometimes lead to increased cost. Next is risk. The final product may not meet all requirements if not carefully managed. If the requirements for subsequent increments are not carefully defined and integrated with the previous increments, there is a risk that the final product may not meet all the customer's need. Next is documentation. Maintaining the documentation for each increment can be challenging. As the project progresses, it becomes increasingly important to keep track of the changes made to each increment. This can be time consuming and difficult to manage, especially for large products. Now we will see when to use the incremental model. When the project is too large to be delivered as a single unit, the incremental model can be used to break down the project into smaller or manageable increments. This allows for a structured and efficient development process. Next is uncertain requirements. When requirements are not fully defined at the beginning, the incremental model can be used to address uncertainties gradually. As the project progresses, new requirements can be incorporated into subsequent increments, ensuring that the final product meets the evolving needs of the customer. Next is time to market pressure. When the product needs to be delivered quickly, the incremental model can be used to deliver working product early on. This allows for early feedback and iterations, accelerating the development process. Last is risk mitigation. When there is a high level of uncertainty or risk, the incremental model can be used to identify and mitigate risk incrementally. By breaking down the project into smaller increments, it becomes easier to manage and control risk. Now, we will see the diagram of the incremental model. The diagram illustrates the incremental model in software development. It shows how the development process is divided into multiple increments, each of which follows a similar sequence of phases. So first phase is analysis. This phase involves gathering and analyzing the requirements for the current increment. Next is design. The design phase involves creating a blueprint for the increment, outlining the architecture, component and interfaces. Next is code. The coding phase involves implementing the design into actual code. The last phase is test. The testing phase involves verifying that the code meets the specified requirements and identifying and fixing any defects. After completing these phases for an increment, the increment is delivered and becomes part of the final product. The process is then repeated for subsequent increments, with each increment adding new functionality or features to the existing product. The diagram shows three increments, but the number of increments can vary depending on the project's complexity and requirements. The key idea is that the development process is broken down into smaller, manageable parts, allowing for flexibility, early delivery, and risk reduction. Thank you.